Good evening, everyone. Hey, Norris Trent. Hey, Astro Alchemy. Hello, Deborah. Hello, Nazare. Let's wait a few minutes before I start talking. This is the first time I'm going to test going online on YouTube. Since it is a test, I did not warn anyone, did not let anyone know. Let's see what happens here. This live is going to discuss the spiritual direction mankind does not want to follow. We are going to analyze the nodes axis. The nodes in astrology are not planets. They're positions in the sky. An easy way to explain that is where the orbit of the moon crosses the ecliptic. So in a way, we can say that it is about where the sun and the moon join. They add their energies. And this creates 2 points of intersection. One of these points is called the north node, and the other point is called the south node. And the north node is the spiritual direction of mankind, whereas the south node is our attachment, the place where we have become stuck at and we don't want to leave. Well, in the last years, there has been an enormous amount of planets in Capricorn. So lots of transits going on in Capricorn. And the South Node is also in Capricorn. So this concentration of planets in one sign, we call that in astrology a stellium, which means 3 or more planets or 3 or more astrological points at the same sign. And this is happening in Capricorn. So the first one that entered Capricorn was Pluto in 2008, and it is still there. It is still going to be there until January 2024. It is going to touch Aquarius in 2023, but it only moves there in 2024. Then after that, we had in September 2017, Lilith going into Capricorn. A few months later, on December 2017, Saturn entered Capricorn. Then in June 2018, the South Node entered Capricorn. And finally, on December 2019, Jupiter entered Capricorn, not to mention the times that Mars went through Capricorn too. So a lot of people in Capricorn. And the only thing that still is in the sign of Cancer is the North Node. in Cancer alone. And the North Node is exactly our spiritual direction. So our spiritual direction lies alone in a sign, whereas our attachments in the opposite sign, Capricorn, are too many, and the strength of these attachments is very intense. Well, we see that there is little chance that we move towards our spiritual direction, since there is so much power pulling us backwards, and only one power suggesting that we move forward. So to begin with, let's take a look at the South Node in Capricorn. What is this power that pulls us backwards? Well, Capricorn is the star sign of Capricorn is the star sign of themes that are very valued these days. Capricorn is the star sign of work, of our careers, and of success. So sometimes I say that the themes that interest people most in a consultation room, particularly if they are professionals, are money and success. And the third theme is love. So 99% of people that come to a consultation room or in company program, they are always looking for answers in one of these three areas. And as you can see, two of them are related to work, money and success. And Capricorn rules work, careers, success, and social status. As you can see, these things are things that are considered to be very valuable in our society. And the South Node is always something that shows that we are addicted to the sign where it is. So what this means is that our society is addicted to work, addicted to our careers, addicted to success, and addicted to social status. So North Strength is asking, what does it mean? All those planets in Capricorn related to attachment. It means that we are attached to these things. We cannot let them go, and we cannot move towards the spiritual direction of the North Node in Cancer, which we'll discuss in a few minutes. But it means that the strength pulling us backwards, the strength pulling us towards our attachments, is much stronger than those pulling us towards the spiritual direction. That's what it means. And of course, since the South Node is in the same sign of many other planets, that means that we are addicted to all of the energies of all these planets in Capricorn. So I am going to analyze the basics of each one of these planets now being in Capricorn, because then you will be able to see each attachment that we are now being stuck at. Okay, so I'm going to start with Pluto, which was the first planet that entered Capricorn in January 2008. Well, as many of you know, 2008 was the year when the last economic crisis began, the one before the one that is starting now with coronavirus. So that crisis, in my opinion, never ended, because before Corona, we were still feeling the impact of this crisis in our lives. And some countries, such as Italy and Greece, were also feeling the effects of this recession. And so it never ended. And the one that is starting now is starting on top of that other crisis, which means it is going to be worse, of course. Now, Pluto is, for those who know mythology, Pluto is a god of the underworld. So it always deals with occult things, things that we cannot see in the beginning, and only much later in time are we able to see those energies, those forces doing things. So, as you already know, Capricorn is the sign of work, career, success, and social status. And then Pluto in Capricorn is going to deal with these things, okay? So it means occult powers in all these areas. Occult powers doing things we can't see when it regarding work, career, success, and social status, okay? And what we have been seeing is that, well, lots of things are happening to us in the last years. So we lost a lot of money. And maybe this is not happening in absolute numbers, but it is happening in relative numbers, because our purchasing power is smaller than it was before. When we go to Saturn in Capricorn, we are going to see that we are working more. But here in Pluto, we see that we are making less money because our purchasing power is smaller. Also, we are losing jobs, we are losing social status, and one thing that worries me very much is that income inequality is rising very quickly. So it is skyrocketing, and I have read some studies that say that income inequality today is as high as it was in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, we had this royal class, especially the royal family, that was literally dressed in gold, and many other people were walking naked in the street. So it's this kind of distance that we are observing in our current society, because although life conditions have improved immensely since the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, for instance. Of course, they have. Those who have more money improved their lives and their amount of wealth so much more than we improved our own life conditions, that the distance, although we got better, the distance has grown a lot, okay, from the top 1% to the bottom 99%. This is common knowledge. It has been discussed in many places around the world, and more recently in the USA primaries for the elections that will take place very soon. And one thing we need to understand about Pluto in Capricorn is that Pluto is always the planet that tries to teach us to look deep into darkness, because as the god of the underworld, Pluto, or Hades, as some of you would prefer to call it, it of course, if it inhabits the underworld, it is going to look into darkness. To the real things that are happening beneath the surface. And that means Uh, what is the darkness of Capricorn? This is what we need to ask ourselves. What is the darkness related to work, career, social status, and success? Well, the thing is that, of course, we don't like to look into darkness. We prefer not to do that. And when it comes to Capricorn, it means that we are not prepared, we are not willing to accept that there are very cruel and inhuman people. Capricorn is the sign where emotions and vulnerability and the fact that we are fragile creatures, this is Cancer, and Capricorn is the opposite of that, is the lack of emotions, the lack of vulnerability. So when Pluto is in Capricorn, we are forced to, we should, forget that, we are not forced. We should look at into darkness and recognize that there are cruel people, there are inhuman people, and whose sole purpose is to make money, whose sole purpose is to have more power at the expense of others. This, unfortunately, is a reality. We prefer to believe that this is not a reality, that we are caring people, that we pay attention to other people, that we are generous, but unfortunately, that is not what happens to all of us. And the problem is that those who are not cruel, those who are not inhuman, we are concerned with moral standards. We are concerned about ethics. So when we are going to do something, we try to be ethical. We try to think of other people. But these people that are cruel, that are inhuman, they do not have moral standards. They do not abide by ethics. So nothing can stop them. And that makes it much easier for them to achieve power, to be in positions of power. It's much easier for them to be in the government. It's much easier for them to be presidents, to be senators, to be dictators, people that have power, in positions of power. And for us, it is more difficult because we are trying to abide by ethics. We are trying to follow moral standards. Therefore, we limit ourselves. We have limited actions. We cannot do whatever we want. We cannot do whatever crosses our minds, because some of our actions could hurt other people. And especially spiritualists, when they consider power, the standard spiritual reaction is to state, I don't want to meddle in power. I don't want to be in a position of power, because power corrupts. Power puts me in the position of making mistakes. So we avoid the position of power. We avoid being elected presidents or senators. We avoid being dictators. We try to consider the reality of other people. But the final outcome of this situation, Pluto in Capricorn, teaches us that it is much easier for those who are not concerned with ethics or other people to achieve the position of power, to be our rulers. So there is this tendency that spiritual people are never ruling. They're never in positions of power. And those who are not interested in ethics are in the position of power, and they are ruling us. So there is this a tragic reality that is that Pluto wants to teach us, that either we rule, or we are going to be ruled by those who have no ethics. So one thing that spiritualists should really think about is their behavior of avoiding power, avoiding positions of power, because as long as they do that, people who are not spiritual, people who are not ethical, are going to be in power, and we will then be unable to complain because we are not doing our part. Well, in 2017, 2 other planets went into Capricorn, Saturn and Lilith. So let's discuss Saturn first. Well, Saturn is quicker to understand because it's easier to grasp what it means. So Saturn in Capricorn shows difficult times, because both the planet Saturn and the sign of Capricorn mean difficult times. Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Therefore, it intensifies its energies. And that means that we are going through a period of too much work. More than that, too much hard work. Not only too much hard work, but also our bosses and all other authorities are very, very demanding. So they make sure that the conditions that we face currently are more and more difficult. They feel entitled to demand more and to create more difficult conditions. And maybe some of you are experiencing the situation of having to work more and more to make the same amount of money or less. And even when we analyze the way the world of working is thinking currently, and the way entrepreneurship is thinking currently, there is all this talking about performance and professionals who are top performers. And this is a very controversial topic, because generally top performing means working more and more and more. It is much more about the amount of work than the quality of work. This is a wrong concept, a wrong idea about performance, but it is a very common mistake. So I have read texts, for instance, saying that there were people in New York recently waking up 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, sometimes 3 in the morning to get to work very early, and they would work until late hours. Of course, this is an exaggeration, but this is happening in many places. And currently, with the rise of technology, especially during this lockdown, when our bosses and other authorities and work colleagues can reach us through messaging, through WhatsApp, and other digital ways of communicating. So our work hours are not being respected anymore, because people can talk to us at any given time. Therefore, we need to work more and more and more, and this is mixed up with performance, as if someone who worked very much would be a top performer, and this is absolutely false. Performing has nothing to do with the amount that you work. It has much more to do with how much you can produce, with the results you can achieve. And if you can achieve good results working less hours, then you are a top performance, because it is much more about efficiency and less about the amount that you work. But Saturn in Capricorn is not interested in the right concept of top performance. It is interested in making things more difficult. Therefore, you have to work more and more and more to achieve less results, and especially to make less money. And that implies that you have less time with the things that concern Cancer, which is the opposite sign. So you are going to have less time with your family, less time with the people that you love, and less time for having fun. And because all that time is being dedicated to work. And we need to also to recognize that all of this is based upon ambition, because we are ambitious creatures. And when Saturn is in Capricorn, we are our ambition skyrockets. It is in very high levels, and we become we desire very much to achieve success because of this ambition that we are feeling. And first of all, there's nothing wrong with ambition. This is, I consider this to be one of the human instincts. Ambition is wanting to achieve something, to build something, to realize something. And this is positive. No problem with ambition from my perspective. But the problem is when we become addicted to our success, therefore our ambition is limitless. And this is something that is happening now. It is going to happen until December 2020, because very soon all these planets that are now in Capricorn are going to move to Aquarius, and then the whole reality is going to change. It is very close for this to happen. In December 2020, Saturn and Jupiter are also going to move to Aquarius. Pluto is going to move to Aquarius. It is touching Aquarius in 2023, and then it moves definitely to Aquarius in 2024. So lots of people in Aquarius very soon. Well, another planet, another astrological thing, let's say like that moved through Capricorn was Lilith. I say was because it has already moved away from Capricorn. Lilith, again, is not a planet. It is a position in the sky. It is a part of the moon's orbit. And so not a planet, but I'm going to refer myself to it as if it were a planet because it makes it easier for us to discuss it. So Lilith moved into Capricorn in September 2017, and it stayed there until June 2018. And this was terrible news, because Lilith is a very, very complicated planet to deal with. It is not possible to deal with Lilith in a fully healthy way until you have 5 dimensions. It requires 5 dimensions to work properly. There are reasons for that, but they are very complicated to put inside another discussion like the one we are having today. So maybe one day only for Lilith. Meanwhile, you can read my book, which is behind me, The Paradigm of Sense, for those who can read Portuguese, very soon for those who want to read it in English. But for now, let's say that Lilith in scenarios that are up to 4 dimensions, which encompasses, in my opinion, like almost the entirety of mankind. Lilith in these scenarios mean total unconsciousness, total 100% of unconsciousness. Lilith is what we cannot admit to ourselves. We prefer to lie to ourselves. We prefer to suffer in silence. We prefer to do whatever it takes not to admit what Lilith is doing. So when Lilith is doing something, it is happening. It is happening very, very powerfully, but we cannot see and we cannot admit. So in this period of time, from September 2017 to June 2018, Lilith was in Capricorn, and it made this entire reality of Capricorn, the entire reality of Saturn in Capricorn, of Pluto in Capricorn, unconscious for us, and we stopped looking at these things completely. So ignoring these things completely. And then all the authorities had all the room they needed to be authoritarian and demanding and make us work more in order to make less money, and to make us feel very small when compared to social pressure. And also it made Pluto in Capricorn free to do whatever it wanted, because we were not looking. We were unconscious of its movements, and then people could do whatever they want in the positions of power. They could be cruel, be inhuman, and commit abuse of power. Because Lilith makes all matters worse in Capricorn, and it makes us to deny reality. We don't want to look at reality. Capricorn is reality. Capricorn is the stone, the bone, everything that is related to the hard reality, related to facts. Therefore, Lilith in Capricorn doesn't want to acknowledge facts, doesn't want to look at facts. It is completely out of reality. But Lilith in Capricorn has effects of its own. So it increases the abuse of power that Pluto in Capricorn already means, and it adds up to this situation the permission to exploitation. So as you can see, when we put Lilith into the equation, everything becomes much, much darker, because now abuse of power and exploitation are allowed. And as you can imagine, this influenced many elections around the world, because many elections happened since 2008, and some elections happened after these planets moved into Capricorn in 2017, in 2018. There was a period of time in April 2018 where Mars was also with all these planets in Capricorn. So that point in time was especially dark, and the energies of Pluto and Lilith were hiding what was being done in the positions of power by our authorities. They were deciding things that we did not know they were deciding. They were deciding things, metaphorically speaking, during the night, and we could not look at these things. And the problem is with Lilith that we love to place responsibility into other people. So we like to accuse other people about Lilith's topics, and when it comes to Capricorn, we like to accuse other people of abusing power. We like to accuse other people of exploiting others, as if we were saints, as if we would never abuse our power, never exploit anyone. And of course, this is a lie, because we would never elect people that would do this, and we would never accept the deeds of authorities or of bosses if we did not have these things inside ourselves, if we did not admit the existence of these things. Because if we were radical regarding this type of behavior, we would be radical denying these people the right to do these things. We would not allow them to do these things. But if you are honest, you are going to admit that these things have become the new normal. So in our society, it's commonly accepted that authorities abuse power, that authorities exploit others, and sometimes people that are not in the position of being the most powerful people, as presidents and senators and dictators are, but they are in upper social classes. They support this type of government because they benefit from it. And this is extremely unfair, but it happens. So there is a tendency inside ourselves that is helping these people to do such things. And when we add all of these things up and put them together, what we get from all this presence of so many planets in Capricorn is that we have a lot of oppression. So our society is currently based on oppression. And this oppression comes from mostly from the positions of power, but it happens in day-by-day lives. So it has become a common thing to oppress other people in whatever social class that we are considering. So this is the total scenario of Capricorn. Now I'm going to move to the spiritual direction pointed by the North Node in Cancer, which is the position that we are denying. And I invite you, if you want, to ask questions. I'm going to have some time for questions in a few moments. Before I move to the North Node in Cancer, I first want to make a small comment on the presence of Jupiter in Capricorn, because Jupiter entered Capricorn very recently in December 2019, and it is going to remain there until December 2020. So we still have around 8 months of Jupiter being in Capricorn. Jupiter is a very positive planet, and when it entered Capricorn, I hoped that it would bring some positivity to these themes of Capricorn, work, career, success, and social status. I think it did. I think it brought opportunities and luck and positivity to these areas. But we need also to consider that Jupiter increases everything it touches. So all the things that were in Capricorn, and I mentioned before here, increased because of the presence of Jupiter. So more abuse of power, more exploitation, more demanding bosses, more difficult times, more people ruling us and abusing power, more oppression, okay? And as we can see up to now in this coronavirus crisis, law enforcement is much stricter than it was before. Like we observed China forcing people to stay home, and with good reason. So good reasons are becoming reasons for more and more power being and more laws being enforced over the world's population. The quarantine is also a way of using power for making people staying home. Of course, again, there is good reason to do that. I am in quarantine myself, so I believe this needs to be done. The problem is that, as Yuval Harari has been saying recently, it is very likely that these things stay after the coronavirus crisis is over, because there is always something in the future that requires such powers to be enforced, and this level of control to exist. So possibly a second wave of coronavirus or of some other virus or some other reason to do that. then Jupiter in Capricorn increased the abuse of power and of surveillance over us, and this is probably going to stay. Now let's look at the spiritual direction that we have here in the North Node in Cancer. And the thing is that it is completely opposite to everything that I have discussed up to now, because Cancer is the sign of our inner worlds. Therefore, the spiritual direction that mankind is avoiding at all costs is looking inside. We don't want to look inside. We want to look outside. So when we look at career, success, social status, classically, we are looking outside. Of course, that we can consider our interior world in these areas of life, and we should do that, integrating both areas of our lives, but we don't usually do that. Of course, it would be better to realize things, not only in the sense of making things concrete, of building things, but also in the sense of understanding things, of developing consciousness. But we don't do these things at the same time. Generally, we separate these things and we consider work, career, success, and social status as external things, things of the outer world, whereas looking inside is something of the inner world, and the spiritual direction is currently to look inside. Because what Cancer is doing is teaching us how to be more fragile, not weak, but fragile, teaching us how to be more vulnerable. Because the thing is that when we are only in Capricorn, we ignore sensitive. We are not any longer worried about who we are. We are not any longer worried about who other people are, with what we are feeling, with what other people are feeling, and what is happening in the inside. And then our lives become empty. So Cancer invites us to look towards our inner world and see and consider what we are feeling. And to do that, we need to be vulnerable. We cannot be insensitive. To consider what other people are feeling, we need to be vulnerable and fragile, because these things open ourselves to the reality of other people. Therefore, we need to do it. And we also need to understand when it comes to Cancer that we need things. Cancer is nurturing, is and nurturing in many senses, like having food, is sleeping, taking care of ourselves, and doing the same things, the same things for other people. So Cancer Cancer is like the mother of the zodiac. So it is taking care of yourself and other people. And that means relating ourselves to one another and being more comprehensive, being more generous, compassionate, and human. And in reality, that is what we are. When we move into our professional worlds and careers, we like to portray ourselves as 100% strong. We like to portray ourselves as flawless, as 100% competent and efficient, that we never have any needs whatsoever. We only provide. We never ask for. We never need anything. And of course, this is entirely false. It is impossible to be such human being. We have needs. We have vulnerabilities. We have emotions. And the spiritual direction is asking us that we consider these other parts of ourselves, because we need to decide whether we want a life that is very successful, very realizing, very that accomplishes many things in the outer world, in the material world, but is entirely ignorant of our inner lives. It disconsiders entirely our inner lives and our inner needs. And when we become 100% oriented towards outside, we start to leave behind what is meaningful for us, what makes sense for us. And all of a sudden, our lives don't make sense to ourselves anymore. They become meaningless lives, which is very much ambiguous because we have accomplished so many things there in Capricorn, and yet our lives are meaningless lives because we did not satisfy our own needs, and we did things that made sense to ourselves. Well, now I am here, open to your commentaries and questions, if there are any. North Street is asking, so how long will it stay? Well, all these planets that are in Capricorn, they are moving to Aquarius. And that is going to happen in waves. So in December this year, we are going to have Jupiter and Saturn moving to Aquarius. And that is going to start a period of change in our society, because Aquarius is a sign that is classically related to revolutions. So if the many peoples around the world decide to start a revolution and change the way our society is structured, then things are going to start to change. Capricorn is the sign of social structure, and Aquarius is the sign of revolutions. So as planets move into Aquarius, there are more chances of revolutions. And Pluto is going to touch Aquarius in 2023, and then it moves into Aquarius in 2024. And in 2025, Uranus enters Gemini. In this situation, there will be the best situation possible for a good revolution, like the French Revolution and the American Revolution in the end of the 18th century. These conditions are going to repeat. So we are now going to enter a period of transition, but it only starts in the end of this year, this year, and grows in 2023 and 4 and 5. Okay. Yes, there is probably going we are probably going to have a second wave of the virus. I have read news that it happened in Hong Kong already, as soon as they relaxed their quarantine. So yes, probably a second wave of this. Let's see. Astro Alchemy is asking, after the North Node moves away from Cancer in May, June this year, yes, that's correct, what sign will be in our collective North Node? This is a very interesting question, and is probably going to be the topic of my next live next week. The North Node is going to move to Gemini, because the North Node moves backwards. So it always moves to the previous sign instead of moving to the next sign. And when it goes to Gemini, it will mean that the spiritual direction is that we need to go back to basics. And I suppose that after a pandemic like this, going back to basics and trying to rethink the way that we are doing things, not adjusting things, not making things better, but starting from the scratch. I think this is the best way to summarize what the North Node in Gemini means. In YouTube, Felipe F. Maya is asking, well, Uranus could be the cause of the COVID-19, of the coronavirus. No, not in my opinion. In my opinion, Uranus in Taurus is the cause of the economic crisis that has been unleashed by the coronavirus. So, of course, when we are looking at the sky, we need to consider many transits and many things that are happening at the same time. And Uranus is the part of the sky that is determining this economic crisis. But in my opinion, the planet that is really starting this disease and the pandemic is Uranus, is Neptune in Pisces. So Neptune in Pisces is causing the pandemics, because Neptune and Pisces are the planet and sign of diseases that are unknown, chronicle, difficult to diagnose, and difficult to treat, difficult to heal. Therefore, in my opinion, this is what is going on. There are some astrologies that think that viruses are unleashed by Pluto. That's the opinion of Susan Miller, which is who is an astrologist, an astrologist from New York that I admire very much. But I disagree with her on this one. I think yes, Pluto is doing many things when it comes to this crisis, but I believe that it is working more on destroying our social structure and recreating the way we organize ourselves as a society instead of unleashing the virus. Neptune, as a planet that rules transcendence, is much closer to forcing us to live experiences we don't want to live. And I think this is a good definition of a pandemic. When does Neptune move out of Pisces? That's a good question, and I don't know to answer that by heart, but I'll take a quick look. Let me see. Fortunately, I left one astrological app at hand, so it is going to be in 2026. And this is a dangerous move because it is going to move into Aries, and Neptune in Aries creates the notions of myths. When I'm not against myths, but I mean human people, a given person to be considered as a myth, and when that happens in our world, nothing good can come out of that, because what I mean by that is that Neptune in Aries creates the tendency that we see people like Mussolini and Hitler and other people that consider themselves to be myths arise, and they authorize themselves, they allow themselves to have power, a level of power there that is incompatible with democracies. Therefore, Neptune in Aries, of course, it's going to bring lots of good things, but also it has these shadows. It's going to give us a lot of reasons to make revolutions happen. Well, I have time for one or two more questions, depending on the questions. Let's see. Felipe Maya is asking on YouTube, do we have planets that could say when the quarantine could end? Yes. In the last week's live, I discussed the planets, which are not planets, they are again things in the sky. Chiron, which is a smaller planet, and Lilith, which I define today as a part of Moon's orbit. Both of them are in Aries. The energy of Chiron in Aries is the energy of a prisoner, and the energy of Lilith in Aries is the energy of a hostage. Therefore, when combined, a prisoner and a hostage, and there the planets also of Chiron is the planet of the disease, and Lilith is the planet of the plague, of the pest. Therefore, together they make this terrible combination and puts and put us into house arrest that we have been calling quarantine and lockdowns. So these planets, well, Chiron is going to be, that's bad news. Chiron is going to be in areas up to 2027. I don't believe we're going to be quarantined for as long as this, but this is when Chiron's transit ends in Aries. And Lilith is quicker. Lilith is going to leave Aries much sooner than that, still this year, but I don't have how to calculate that now because not every app calculates with Lilith, and the app that I have that does that in a quick way is in my phone that I am using to do this live. So I can't do that for now. But maybe if you ask me that in direct message, I can reply that to you. It is going to be still this year. Well, I thank you very much for your presence. It was very good to make this live with you, and I hope we see each other next week. Thank you very much.